Africa contributes the least to climate change, but suffers the most from its effects.
I think the most important environmental battle is poverty. Why are farmers the poorest and the hungriest in the world? That's unacceptable. We eat every day. What is wrong with that food value chain? Who's winning if they're losing?
What do you think some of the solutions are?
We are perhaps underutilizing our opportunities and under-leveraging the brilliance. And it is unacceptable that we would live in a country so bountiful and still consider ourselves, by some definitions, poor.
How can we ensure that solutions are truly African-led and not imposed from the outside?
There is something fundamentally wrong when entrepreneurs don't feel that they can thrive. And we will not grow an economy without that private sector. That's why SDG 1 is poverty. We have to get at poverty to get at the rest. Is it really impossible?
Welcome to the Doers Defined podcast, where our mission is to amplify emerging market heroes bringing positive change. Our guest today is a true force in global sustainability, a champion for climate action, and a leader in restoring our planet's future. Wanjira Mathai is a managing director for Africa and global partnerships at the World Resources Institute, WRI, and one of the most influential voices in climate action, in reforestation, and sustainable development. As the daughter of the late Professor Wangari Maathai, the first African woman to win the Nobel Peace Prize, Wanjira carries forward a powerful legacy of environmental leadership, social impact, and grassroots empowerment. With years of experience in global advocacy, green finance, and community-led restoration, she is driving bold initiatives like the African Landscapes Restoration Initiative, the AFR 100, which is a movement working to restore 100 million hectares of degraded land across Africa. And also note, she is also a Time 100 honoree. Beyond policy and large-scale projects, Wanjira is deeply passionate about uplifting women and youth in climate leadership, ensuring that those most affected by climate change are also part of the solution. Today, we dive into her journey, her work, her vision, and what it truly means to be a doer in the fight for a sustainable future. Wanjira, my dear friend, welcome to the Doers Defined podcast.
Oh, thank you, Elsie. That was most generous.
Yeah, but very, very needed,
Thank
you know?
Thank you.
I want to dive right in so that people actually get to know the Wanjira I know as well. You come from a legacy of environmental activism. Was there pressure to follow in your mother's footsteps, or did you find that path naturally?
Great question. There was never pressure. There was never pressure to do what my mother did. And in fact, actually, I grew up thinking it was like a box. It's done, tick that box, I have to find something else. So we always thought we had to you can't do the same thing and be a copycat.
Yeah.
So I always imagined a different path for myself. And so it was. I was in public health. I was a scientist in high school and then went on to do public health. So I didn't even have environment in its sort of classic definition in my sights. Well, now we know it's all connected. But it was very much, no, you don't have to do the same thing as anybody else. In fact, try and do something different, because that's taken.
Great. And I'm sure a lot of people might be asking, who is Wanjira Mathai at the core? So if you're going to use some adjectives to describe yourself, what would those be?
Wow. Well, a mother, I am really proud of the two girls we have who have just grown up to be amazing, kind, thoughtful humans. And you can't be grateful for the fact that perhaps they mirror what they see. And so I'm really grateful for who they are becoming. I'm a community builder. I like to think of myself as a community builder, working to bring pieces together. I lose sleep over inaction, especially where there are possibilities, where there's potential, a word that I have banned from my vocabulary, because there's opportunity. And we really need to think about that. So I like to see myself as a community builder. I'm an activist. I think when you see something, you have to say something or do something. We all have a responsibility to give of our time, our talent, our treasure in anything we are committed to. So if you're not in it, you're supporting someone who is, or you're giving of your talent for it. So I really believe we all have to engage. So just a few.
Well done. And then being recognized on the Time 100 list as one of the most influential people in the world, it's an incredible honor. But we also know that influence doesn't always translate into action. So how are you, as Wanjira Mathai, using this recognition today in the fight for sustainability?
You know, Elsie, the truth is they found me. I didn't find them. And so I just do what I'm doing. The recognitions come, but it's not, you don't do anything because of them. And that is a liberating feeling, because that means what you're doing, I see them more as a nod, that what you're doing is right. Keep doing you. Keep doing what you're doing. Do more of it even. So I continue to amplify the voices of young people. I continue to speak for smallholders. I continue to make linkages between forests and economy, food and economy, restoration and economy. So how do we get people out of poverty? I'm obsessed with that agenda. And every time I get a recognition, I know I'm on the right track. Somebody else thinks I'm doing the right thing. So it's not even so much how I use it. I just feel like it amplifies the work that is already going on. Keep doing it.
Oh my gosh, brilliantly said. Because I think a lot of people first focus on the accolades and then it's not as much about the mission. Yeah. So it's wonderful to hear that it's mission first.
Oh, absolutely.
For you.
That's how they find you,
yeah.
right? Something you're doing is good. So
I think
if you stop.
A reminder for anybody who's aspiring to be part of Time 100.
Just keep busy.
Do your work.
Keep busy.
All right. So I'm going to take it now, I think, more to climate. And I think this dear continent of ours that we love, Africa. So Africa contributes the least to climate change, but suffers the most from its effects. What do you think are the most urgent environmental battles this continent is facing right now?
Well, this might surprise you, but I think the most important environmental battle is poverty. That if we do not address unacceptable poverty in our society, in our country, in our region, we will never achieve climate goals, we'll never achieve sustainability goals. That's why SDG 1 is poverty. We have to get at poverty to get at the rest. And it is unacceptable that we would live in a country so bountiful and still consider ourselves, by some definitions, poor. It actually is extremely disempowering because we are not poor. We are actually extremely well endowed. We know that. We have some of the best weather in the world. And as a result, we have the most incredible fruits, vegetables. I go to places where I'm like, you don't have passion fruit?
Good mangoes.
5 types of mangoes. Yeah. We really need to remind ourselves of just how blessed we are. And because of that, we are perhaps underutilizing our opportunities and under-leveraging the brilliance. I've never met anywhere in this world a Kenyan who's sitting on their hands. We and all Africans, the people are busy. Everybody knows we are blessed. That's why we know from the Africa Climate Summit that the narrative is shifting from one of a disempowered victim of climate to one that knows we are at the center of the solutions to the climate crisis. In fact, the world has no chance of addressing the climate crisis if Africa doesn't unlock her opportunities. So everybody should be very busy trying to figure out how Africa's green competitive advantage will be at the core of how we solve it. What I worry about is the nonchalance about the continent, the historical neglect of the continent. And of course, we've been left behind on so many levels. But I think the real opportunities are there. We need to make sure we resource them. I found out something, Elsie, not just today. I think the Afrobarometer report came out this week out of the Mo Ibrahim Institute, and it looks at perception and reality. If these investments are being made in health, why do people believe health doesn't exist? So we believe, if you and I were asked, we'd say we don't have a good healthcare system.
Yeah.
But actually, if you looked at government investments, they're making investments in health. But the truth is there's a disparity in the actual investment in the structure and the investment in the software. Do we have medicines in those hospitals? Do we have qualified doctors and nurses? Is this a place where you take your child and they get the cure? We talk about the experience we have with healthcare. Government talks about the infrastructure investment. We're talking about different things. We really need to begin to work on the software side. And that's where what the investments that are made are not doing anything if we don't have the skills, if we don't have the investments being made. What I found out, Elsie, is that we're investing twice as much in renewables today globally than we are in fossil fuels. Then one would expect that the hub of the best solar potential in the world would have twice as much investments. We don't see investments flowing, you tell me. But why is that? We need to get to the granular levels of what it takes to unlock the sort of finance we need, the investments we need to really unleash what we know are great opportunities here. That's what I lose sleep about now. I don't lose sleep about the challenges because I think we are blessed more than many. We just need to get at what it takes to unlock them.
Oh, Wanjira, what an optimistic view, and I think this is why it was so important to hear your viewpoints, in this fight against global emissions. And now, this ties in with what you just said, because we recognize that there's a need for rapid development growth in Africa, and that's undeniable. Yeah. But how can we strike a balance between development and environmental conservation, ensuring that progress doesn't come at a cost of our natural heritage?
Yeah. I think partly our language needs to change. I think progress is leaning into sustainability. We know today some of the most progressive places in the world have bike paths, walk paths, parks for kids. Children are the happiest because they can go into the forest. Japanese have the concept of forest bathing. That's progress. And we need to really begin to see that as progress. But we also know that the energy of the future is renewable.
Yep.
The energy of the future is renewable. So green and development are not mutually exclusive. In fact, they are one and the same. And it's in our best interest to develop sustainably. I love the story of mobile telephony and how people said, we had landlines. We grew up on landlines, dialing like this. Can you imagine if we had said that we must make sure that every Kenyan has a landline before we ever consider mobile phones? No, we actually did away with the mobile phone because it was a leap that happened that was beyond anybody's expectation. I think the studies that were done by McKinsey and them were blown out of the water by the adoption that happened. We need to be open to the possibility that we will go past certain ways and that progress will actually mean renewable, sustainable, green. We'll be walking everywhere. We'll be healthier as a result. I really dream. I always say that one day, if I was in charge of this country for one day, I would completely invest in pedestrian safety and pedestrian access. lack of pedestrian access is an indicator of the neglect we have on our society. If you go anywhere and general population is walking on the road, that country it is a very good indicator of what the rest of the country is like. We have got to do better about how we treat our pedestrian access, because it's actually part of how we all have to move through. Non-motorized transit is the future because we are polluting ourselves out of our minds. We are living in very unhealthy, breathing very unhealthy air. And that's because we are more and more cars. There's this idea that if you expand roads,
we get more cars.
Yes, it is actually the principle of induced demand. It is actually well established. So it's not as if you need more cars. You need better managed roads, you need better managed traffic, and you need to incentivize people to do the healthy thing, which is walk, ride their bikes, etc.
So let me take you now, I think, to an organization, that's at the heart of who you are, the Greenbelt movement. And you've empowered thousands of women through tree planting. But Wanjira, tell me, why is empowering women the key to real and lasting sustainability?
Well, the Greenbelt movement story is genius in so many ways. But imagine for a second, my mother started the Greenbelt movement in 1977.
Wow.
That was 40 plus years ago now, going almost 50 years ago. And it was really, what was genius about it, it was really grassroots anchored. My mother was a scientist by training, and it therefore was not by accident that she was an observant. Scientists tend to be quite observant. And she actually had gone to a caucus that was not about the environment. She went to a caucus when in 1976, people were caucusing about the women's conference in Mexico. And Kenyan women were also caucusing. And in that time, they were discussing what are the issues. She was a university academic member of staff, and she went there to represent the issues of the university women members of staff. And those issues were equal pay, access to benefits. But believe it or not, at that time, the university only gave benefits to male members of staff. So women members of staff were expected to get their benefits from their spouses. And so if you were the principal in the university, you were not a man. There was no way for the university to accommodate. So there were very, very clear biases that she was addressing. But when she went there, she found these women talking about really basic human rights. They were talking about water. They were talking about food, lack of nutritious food. They were talking about having to walk farther and farther away for fuel and for water. And none of that made sense because she had grown up. All those women looked to her like her mother. And she said, that's not how I remember it. I didn't go that far. And so she literally abandoned her issues. I never asked her what the university women thought about that. But she abandoned those issues and adopted the issues that the women had brought. And after the caucus, she pulled them aside and says, why don't we plant trees? This came from such a grassroots anchoring that it couldn't but be sustained as a movement because, of course, it was responding to the needs that women had at the time. And so they responded too. It was their response and of course, trees are extremely transformative. You grow them, they change you. You grow something, it changes you. It starts to give you fruit. That's wild, right? Then they're eating the fruit, they're harvesting the leaves, they're giving it to the animals, they're cutting the branches, they're using it for fuel. All of a sudden, they're not leaving the compound. Or if they do, it's at their own choice and will. Maybe we want to go and have a little talk, Elsie. Let's go today pick firewood from a little bit farther away.
Yeah.
But this is a choice. And all of a sudden, they have these opportunities opening up. One of my favorite stories was this woman from Murang'a who, when we went back, Murang'a was one of the places where the Greenbelt movement first started. And to this day, when you drive through Murang'a, you cannot help but see the Greenbelt movement. 40 years of trees. You can't see any house.
It's actually true.
Bananas. So it was about feed yourself from your farm, cover your parameter of your land with trees. There are trees everywhere. This woman said to me, I have been a part of the Greenbelt movement, but my proudest moment It's not the money I received for the trees we planted. It was when my son got married. He built his house from the trees I had planted.
Wow.
Imagine the dignity
Full
in that.
circle.
Can you imagine? So that's sort of joy. It is beyond what money can pay for. And that's what the Green Belt movement did, was really transform people's lives in ways that were beyond the trees. In many ways, my mother used to say the tree was a symbol of hope.
Oh, what a saying. I mean, she was just a remarkable
Right?
woman. Yeah.
I mean, everything she said
and
was...
the apple does not fall
Oh, well, listen.
far from the tree.
There better not be a hill where the apple slips. Lord have mercy.
Oh, that is so brilliant. I had to just stop and just take that in. I actually did not know that story about Moranga. So the next time that I drive down...
pay attention. It is
I'll pay
incredible
attention.
to see. And everyone you go in there, they all know. They were all part of it. They're the mothers, their sons grew up on those trees, grew up knowing those trees, eating those fruit.
Yeah. Oh, it's just beautiful. You spoke a little bit about government. So my question is, do you think that African governments and private sector are doing enough to support green innovation and climate resilience? Or do you think they're dragging their feet?
Well, look, I think they're dragging their feet because the opportunities are so plentiful. And unfortunately, the stories we hear, listen, fundamentally, government's responsibility is to make it easy for entrepreneurs to do what they need to do. Yep. Create the macroeconomic environment for them to thrive.
The frameworks.
Just make it easy. So when you talk to entrepreneurs who say they've been waiting 7 years for a license, so they're moving to another country, or that it's unpredictable, the taxes they have to pay year on, year out. There's something fundamentally wrong when entrepreneurs don't feel that they can thrive. And we will not grow an economy without that private sector and without more and more. We know that our economy has to grow. From everything I've learned about the finance bill and about why our debt to GDP ratio has got to quickly change, on top of everything else, is that we have a very small pie. And we have to grow that pie. And private sector is a big part of that. So everything we can do to create a macroeconomic environment that allows for them to thrive, we ought to be doing. And so I'm not an economist, and neither am I a government functionary. I just know that entrepreneurs are struggling.
Yeah,
and that's unacceptable. That to me is all I need. That what do we need to do to make it easier for entrepreneurs to do their thing?
On that note, then what do you think some of the solutions are? Because I keep asking, they must see it. We're putting our voices out.
Right.
We're on here with Doers Defined, and people are sharing, what is actually happening on the ground. What do you think some of those solutions are, especially from an African government perspective?
Yeah. Well, some of the things that I've heard are the cost of electricity, for example, extremely high. Amongst the East African region, we are the highest. I don't know if that's a choice we've made. Again, it would be good to know. Why are we the highest? Is it necessary? What do we need to do? So one is obviously the cost of electricity. Then, of course, it's just the cost of doing business. It is an extremely frustrating experience for most entrepreneurs to go and register their businesses, to go and get to pay cess at every moment. People just feel it's a frustrating environment to work in. And therefore they move. And of course, finance. Access to finance has been, from what I hear, extremely frustrating for. And I actually sought to understand. I do my Friday learnings, you know about that. And I was trying to figure out, why is it so difficult? And someone explained to me that actually the finance available is not that much. And where it is, everybody is competing for it, including government. So you have government bonds and you have private sector trying to do their thing. And banks would rather be safe with government bonds. So who's going to invest in private sector? Who's going to invest in
They crowd
entrepreneurs?
out private sector.
Crowding out private sector. So those are just a few. What do we need to do to make finance available, incentivize these small businesses, and so that they become the next big ones? Create jobs. We have to create jobs. And jobs will not come, I understand, from anywhere else, but from these wonderful entrepreneurs. And we are extremely innovative, but we cannot have levels of unemployment as we have today. People can be skilled, and many of them are skilled, but where do they go?
This is why I wanted to hear your voice on a lot of these key issues. Yeah, and so I think I wanted to ask, what are some of those bold actions? But I think you're saying them now in terms of these are the things that we need to do to drive real change.
Right. Or even understand why it's not happening. See, we ought to admit we are not in the government. So I don't know the challenges they face. Maybe it's really hard to do these things. We need to know, like, is it really impossible to make it possible for someone to get their license quickly? Like, why is that a problem? Why are we still importing onions? Why are school feeding programs still importing rice and onions? And smallholder farmers in Nyeri, where I come from, I couldn't wait to grow more stuff. They grow in 2 seconds. They're like growing machines. They know how to grow anything. Why is that connection? Why are farmers the poorest and the hungriest in the world? That's unacceptable. We eat every day. What is wrong with that food value chain? Who's winning if they're losing?
Those are the right questions. Those are the right questions. And I think we should be out there, because it's not about even the questions. It's about trying to have conversations and find the solutions. And you do such an incredible job with that.
We try.
We
call
builder.
it peeling the onion. We're peeling this onion until we get to the core.
Yeah. So that brings me to your current position. And at the moment, you're the managing director for Africa and Global Partnerships at World Resources Institute. I think for many of the listeners, of the viewers, how would they understand what you focus on with your work and what impact it has had?
WRI, the World Resources Institute as a whole, is a research organization. We're known for the work we do on research, the tools we build that deliver impact by giving you insights about the state of the world's forests, for example. Global Forest Watch every year releases the state of the world's forest, and we all wait for it, those of us in the sector, to see where have we lost forests, where have we gained forests. We're trying to see how now, as WRI is working more and more in specific countries, how we can do the state of the country's forests or the state of the country's ecosystem. So a lot of the data tools and platforms that WRI has developed are open source for the general public to use. That's a huge asset. And a lot of people use them. They embed them in their risk tools. I've met people who all tell me, well, I have a tool that helps banks decide which farmers to fund, and it's embedded with a WRI tool that helps me see what climate vulnerability looks like. So I'm really proud of the leading cutting-edge research and development of tools. But beyond that, WRI, we like to see ourselves as a think and do tank. We do the research, so we have a motto that we love: count it, change it, scale it. We count it, that's the research. We change it by applying it. So you'll find that's why I'm here as the Africa Director. We have 5 countries where we have actually working with governments and with local communities to anchor those theories and tools that we have in real work. You mentioned AFR 100, an Africa-wide, country-led movement to restore 100 million hectares. 100 million hectares is actually the ambition. This is the political commitment that African governments said. As Kenya, we commit 5 million hectares to AFR 100. Ethiopia, 15 million hectares. Tanzania, 5.1 million hectares, and so on it went until it was a 100 million hectare ambition. We have 130 million hectares committed by these governments. The second phase of that work is we got to get the work done. So where are the trees? Where are the landscapes being restored? So we have another smaller movement that is part of the bigger AFR 100 movement, which again, there are multiple movements. You know, the Great Green Wall.
Yeah.
And the work that we are doing at WRI is called Restore Local. And Restore Local is amazing because it is really anchored in local brilliance, that we cannot restore landscapes if we don't mobilize local genius, which is at the heart of it was the Greenbelt movement's work. Boots on the ground, people who know those landscapes, they know how to take care of them. And we went further, Restore Local. It said, these can actually be restoration businesses. They don't have to just be restore for restore's sake. You could have a company, a young person start a company growing macadamia nut trees within agroforestry systems. So communities green their landscapes while they benefit eventually from macadamia, avocado, all sorts of agroforestry trees. We have people like Greenport, who's Carol Karaoke, who's doing amazing things, creating a bamboo business. She started by creating bamboo for restoration, and now she's opening a factory to produce bamboo products. We know that bamboo is the wood of the future. It is a grass that keeps on giving, that we can actually move to this disruptive innovator of a product that has wood that is harder than steel in some formations. It is beautiful to look at. It is our food. It is our fuel. It's all the above. And she's building a business around that. Those are the businesses of the future. And those are the ones who are transforming what restoration could be. That you could actually be restoring the landscape and making a living at the same time. Don't anybody tell you you can't do development, business, and green the landscape.
A sustainable solution.
There you go.
Now, I think I'll anchor, some of the work in terms of the global partnerships, because we keep saying one of the critical opportunities that we have for many of us is to bring financing. Now, with that, how do you ensure that a lot of these global philanthropies really understand what it takes to deliver real impact on the African continent? As you're having conversations,
I think philanthropy is changing in many ways. One, the scale of it. There's a lot more money that wants to be deployed. There's a lot of generosity, people with a lot of money who want to do the right things. And I really think the opportunities lie in some of these restoration of forest economies, food economies, because a lot of people with money, they're making the money in some sort of transactional. And it is wonderful to be able to demonstrate that actually you're not just throwing your money in a hole. This is a business that is actually also doing good. It's a social business. It's an entrepreneurial business here.
A double bottom line.
Double bottom line, sometimes even triple, with the people, climate, and then, of course, nature. But we know that those combinations are extremely exciting. What happens, I think, with philanthropy, even as it's big, is not coming and partnering with local organizations and local communities directly. You cannot do things you will never have the line of sight that a local community organization has. One of my favorite organizations, Mali Asili, they work with local organizations to help make them stronger, help build their internal capacity, make sure that they're well structured, they have the plumbing, they have everything they need to pass the sniff test of some of these philanthropists who often say, you do so good, but you're just too small. So you get stuck in these cycles of $10,000 grants and you could do much bigger. And we need to break out of that. We need to do more trust philanthropy, where you believe in this idea, invest in them fully, unleash the real potential that they have, the opportunity they have to do this work. And it takes saying that, and we are seeing a lot more of that, but it also takes partnership at the grassroots level. Instead of saying you're too small, you say, you know what, we love what you're doing. Here's the resources to do that. Plus, here's some resources to build your capacity. I need you to have a more robust finance system, and I'm going to invest in that. I need you to have really strong staff, and I'm going to invest in that. That's real partnership. That's someone who is rooting for your rise.
Oh, absolutely.
That's somebody who wants you to do well. But there are many who are sort of like, I'll come back when you do better. But you know how difficult you can't break out. The Green Belt movement has gone through so many transformations, and the most inspiring of them all was when people said, I will hold you hand and get you out, because that's not your core business. Yeah. Your core business is community mobilization, and no one does it better in every language. But we need to make sure that the money comes in, is well accounted for, but we will help you make that system that you need. That's where I want to be counted.
Yes. Truth.
Yes.
So I'm trying to tie in all these different organizations perhaps that we know and their role on the continent. And I keep asking, how can we ensure that solutions are truly African-led and not imposed from the outside?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen a lot of mistakes have been made. You know, as I told you, I'm an accidental environmentalist. I was a public health practitioner.
Make it look easy.
Yeah, I know.
You were destined.
It found me. That's a fact. But public health has so many lessons for us, because public health is one of the only disciplines I know that pays such close attention to community dynamics, knowledge, attitudes, practices. We literally constantly are monitoring. Why is Elsie not taking her medicine? What is it? How many times has she missed it? And they pay attention. They look at that data and they're like, oh, maybe we need to watch. Every time she says she's taken it, we need to actually see her swallow it. They actually are always innovating, but it takes two. You, as an international organization, trying to do it without the involvement, without the partnership of another, you will miss so much that is culturally anchored in community, and in many ways might even do harm. Many of us remember the play pump. Do you remember the play pump?
I don't remember
the play pump. Was a fantastic, it was a great idea that was very well financially backed, and it was a water solution. It was a pump.
Was it the one that
it was the one that children played?
Went round.
It went round.
Okay, yes.
And as they played, the water pumped up to a storage tank, and the water would go out. But implicit, the children need to be playing. And of course, children, especially our children, the minute you say, come, let's go see that bird, they're gone. But that doesn't mean the water is pumped. So you need them to keep playing, whether they like it or not, right?
I didn't actually realize that it was the kids that actually
pumped. It was the kids that were powering the pump. And of course, it missed the entire reality of how children play. When they play, sometimes they don't want to play, but you need water all the time. And then, of course, the realities of the fact that to use a pump like that, the water table has to be really high. The water quality was not a factor. So if you can pump any kind of water. So there were so many pieces that were missed that could have been innovated. And then the one that actually broke my heart the most is that you needed the children. So the mothers would go on the weekends, it worked. But when the children went to school,
that was it. And that's when the women are cooking.
Pushing the poor pump to try and make the thing play. So anyway, so many innovations that seem like really good ideas. It looked really fun and it looked nice when the children were on it, but it wasn't always appropriate. And that's where the whole concept of appropriate technology came from. I used to love that word. It was appropriate technology. It needs to be appropriate. But it's a missed opportunity not to do the hard work of co-creating with community. We're leading a movement right now of community-led forest economies, trying to create a link between the Amazon, Congo, and the forest of Indonesia, and saying that actually in common is this idea that where indigenous communities are, where forests thrive and where communities thrive, forests thrive. Why don't we lean into the well-being of community? Because if we lean into the well-being of communities in Colombia, in Brazil, in Cameroon, in DRC, in Indonesia, we might then see a cascading protection of these forests, theory that we're going to test. But implicit in that is invest in local communities, ask them what they want. They want to do ecotourism.
And they know their solutions.
They know their solutions. Let's lean into the solutions they want. Acai in Brazil, there's Brazilian nuts in all sorts of things. But what is the governance? Who's benefiting? How do we tie them so that those businesses are benefiting the communities whose livelihoods, identities, and cultures are directly linked to the survival of these forests?
Again, you see, I'm just, aha. Now, I want to be intentional because you mentioned Green Pot. What are some other examples of African-led climate innovations or projects that inspire you?
Yeah, outside of Greenport, there's several others. One of those I'm really proud of. Keep It Cool, right here in
Keep It
Kenya.
Cool.
Keep It Cool. How cool is that?
That is so cool.
Francis Derrito is literally transforming food waste, especially in the lake regions where fish goes bad so quickly, by providing cooling solutions, and cooling solutions that are affordable. People can cool a small amount. So Keep It Cool is really well. And they, of course, were recognized by the Earthshot Prize recently.
Yes, that is
as
true.
was Gaio
Yes.
from Ghana, a company that is transforming waste into products and making, and not even only the waste, it was more the pollution, because a lot of that plastic is burnt. So that's doing well. One of my favorite people in Ghana, Akosombo Textiles, Patrick Kwako, Osafa Kwako, who's transforming the textile industry, refusing to allow cotton to leave Ghana and come back as a used t-shirt, saying that we can make with clean energy. The Akosombo Dam is right there. He's building a factory right at the Akosombo Dam to produce green cotton. And he's already doing it. He's already manufacturing, already partnering. But how amazing if he could scale Akosombo. Right here, Anjiro, Shiro Wawero Waithaka, who's doing incredible stuff with textiles. That woman believes in local manufacturing like nobody else does. Herself an interior architect who has decided that if this thing needs cotton, I will grow the cotton. I know she's growing silk now, silkworm. That woman stops at nothing. These entrepreneurs should not be struggling. We should be fagiliaring for them so that we pave the way for them to thrive. They are the job creators. They are the innovators. They're the ones who are harnessing the best of what we have here on the continent. Then we need to do the political work of it, which is to make sure that we protect the value, to make sure that we add value, to make sure that wherever it's done somewhere in the WTO and others, that people are doing the hard work of making sure that the benefits and the localization of manufacturing happens. That's how we transform this planet and this continent in particular.
Magic. And so we'll put a highlight on all those various businesses so that people can learn a little bit more. Look, just a future outlook. Your mother famously said, "It's the little things that citizens do that will make the difference." So what are some everyday actions that people can take to contribute to sustainability?
Yeah, there were always the usual list. If you go online, they'll tell you what to do. But we have to be very intentional. Here on the African continent, reducing emissions should not be the burden of our children or ourselves. But I really believe if we buy local, eat local, invest in local entrepreneurs, really support, a lot of the food that we eat ought to come from here. And if it doesn't, we have to figure out why it's not and make sure that we are feeding ourselves with food that is extremely local. We know that disruptions of supply chains, as we saw in COVID, can be extremely damaging. Let's begin to build that sort of local sustainability that then powers our farmers and make sure that they are the future. They're holding what is their fair share of this economic. So buy local, eat local are my favorite sustainability.
Buy local, eat local. Yeah, we'll be need the new mantra. And there are a lot of people who admire you. Wanjira, you're just such an inspiration. And young people are increasingly at the forefront of climate activism, which is beautiful.
It's amazing
to see.
It's amazing to see, much more than we ever were.
What advice do you give to those young Africans who want to make a difference in this space?
I say around you, just find something you care about. I like to say that wherever we are, especially in this beautiful country of ours, wherever we are on the African continent, the Sun Belt, we are so lucky that we ought to consider ourselves fortunate and think about who else, other than ourselves, will be the beneficiaries of the gift that we have to live in a place like this. And that might mean that you give your time to an issue you care about. That might be that you give your money to an issue that you care about. That might be that you get involved in how you are governed. And we know that our Gen Z in this day and age, they are unbelievably inspiring. If ever there was a moment to lean into supporting, is now. And to find out who needs what support and what can I do with the resources I have, but also with the talent we have. It was amazing to see during Mandamano, young people coming out, bringing water, restaurants providing, churches providing space for doctors.
The full infrastructure. They thought through everything.
Infrastructure, but people gave, even if they were not on the street, they were there to make a case for us. So I really admire that. So get involved. Don't sit. Get involved. Your time, your talent, or your treasure.
Time, talent, or treasure.
Yeah.
Just another magic. Another
I
one.
love that one.
Another
you see, I said it like 3 times. It's such a perfect metaphor for we don't have any excuse.
Yeah. And we have a closing tradition on this podcast where we are intentional about asking, what can this doers community support you with as Wanjira in this fight for climate and sustainability?
Wow, I really think, oh gosh, me as Wanjira, I love going to the spa. A good massage would be great.
Okay, that can be done.
All right. No, in all seriousness, I think one of the things that our mother's generation was so good at is solidarity. They showed up for each other. And sometimes I feel it's back because we see that a lot more. But our generation was not as full of solidarity as our mother's generation was. So I think that's one thing I seek is solidarity, that we show up for each other. You know, if you call me or if something is happening, check up on each other. There was a time actually in this country where we were losing people to suicide and people were like, I didn't even know. Yeah, be a friend. We started a campaign called Be a Friend. So solidarity is a gift that I want to show up for my friends. I want to show up for people, show up for my family. And that, I think, is a gift we can each give each other, even in the bigger movement, in the climate movement, is to show up. If Uhuru Park is in trouble, show up.
Show up.
If Karura is in trouble,
show up. Yeah. Oh, thank you.
Oh, thanks.
Just for those gems. I mean, I'm sitting here and I know you, but I left here completely inspired.
Oh,
just so many
Elsie.
aha
Thanks
moments.
for having me.
And yeah, I think a lot of people will just benefit from just hearing why you do what you do.
Yeah, I love what I do.
And we are right behind you.
Thank you.
Supporting you, championing. I show up.
You
As soon as
do.
I see it, I'm like, I'm showing up.
Do.
And thank
you know what I mean.
for doing the same
thank
for
you.
me.
Absolutely. Thank you, Elsie.
All right.
It's a pleasure.